Welcome to Visual Anthology. In this training video, we'll be showing you how to set up the Anthology Scheduler. The Anthology Scheduler allows you to set up certain tasks such as database, Reindex, and quick backup so they run in the evening after the store is closed so your staff does not have to stand waiting for those tasks to run. First, before we jump into how to set up those items, I'd like to point out the section in the manual that you should review ahead of time. We'll be going over this very quickly, so you'll want to use the paper manual or the electronic manual to give you more detailed information. Simply go to your Help menu and then click on the subtopic of Help. This will bring up the electronic version of the manual. On the left-hand side, you'll see the index system that shows you all the different topics you can access. And in particular, the scheduler information is kept underneath Using Visual Anthology, underneath Using Visual Anthology Tools, and then lastly, you'll see Using Anthology Scheduler. Here you see there's a simple overview, and then there's a special subtopic on scheduling events, and then another topic on running the scheduler. Take a moment to review those and you'll get more information. Back in Visual Anthology, there's a couple of settings we should talk about first. There's some decisions you want to make, such as do you want your staff to have the scheduler start off automatically as soon as they do the Z-tape, or do you want the staff to actually have to start the scheduler when they're leaving for the evening? To control that setting, go to Tools, Options, General tab, and you'll notice on the right-hand side here, and this is version 5.14 that I'm showing you, on the right-hand side you'll see Run Quick Backup after the Z-tape. Now, right now, mine is set to run just the quick backup after the Z-tape, but I can also say Run the scheduler after the Z-tape, and in the scheduler, in a little bit, I'll show you, I can go in and I can add the quick backup, the database Reindex, and some other tasks. So for now, I'll check the Run Scheduler after the Z-tape because I don't want my staff to have to remember to queue up the scheduler. I want it to just come up automatically on its own once they're done with the Z-tape. I would like to pause here for a moment and point out one other very important setting, something you might want to double check when you're looking at your Tools Options settings, and that's this number of backups to save. Now, number of backups to save means how many backup sets do you want the program to keep around. Every time we do a quick backup, we zip up a copy of your Anthology data and we store it in the quick backup folder on your server. Now, you may only want to save a few copies of this, and anywhere from 5 to 10 is more than acceptable. Some stores I do see will have an entry of 0, which actually means not get rid of everything, but it means keep everything ever done. So you may, if yours is set to 0, you may be finding that your hard drive space is dropping. So if yours is set to 0, go ahead and change this to anywhere from 5 to 10. That first time it runs, it'll clean out all the old backups that you don't really need to keep around, and it'll get your drive space back to where you need it. Of course, once you've made your changes in here, don't forget to F10 save. You'll get that usual prompt of needing to close and reopen the program. We'll just click here for the moment, though. So that's the basic setting of, do you want to have the scheduler queue up automatically, or do you want to have your staff do it manually at the end of each night? And in this case, we chose to have it kick off automatically as soon as they finish the Z-tape. Now let's talk a little bit about actually setting up the scheduler. If you go to your Tools menu, you'll see you have an option for Scheduler about halfway down. And then underneath Scheduler are two topics. There's Run and Maintain. Run is where your staff would go if you want them to kick off or queue up that scheduler as they're leaving for the evening. And the Maintain is where you actually modify that scheduler job. I'll click on the Maintain window, and here's my scheduler window. There's no tasks scheduled right now, but I can begin adding tasks in a moment. I would like to pause here and point out one other option you might want to consider. There will be times when you may need to verify, did the scheduler really run last night? And in that case, if you look at your Actions menu, whenever you're in the Maintain Scheduler window, like we are now, you can go to Actions, and you'll have a couple of options. You've got View Scheduler Log and Clear Scheduler Log. As that scheduler runs every night for, the next several weeks and months, we're going to be keeping track of what time did this start, what were the tasks that were done, and did it finish successfully. Over the course of a year or a couple of years, that log file could be a little big. To save yourself some drive space, sometimes if you want, you can come back in here and clear that scheduler log. Back to setting up those tasks. The first thing we want to do is do F4 new so we can add a new record. And here's the process or the task field that we'll need to fill in, along with things like what day and what time. So let's pick our first task, and usually we recommend a certain sequence of tasks to be run. And I usually start off with doing the quick backup option first. Now, I've picked that quick backup process. Now I can choose what day and what time I want that task to run. This is another decision that you'll want to make. If your store closes on the same date and time, same time every week, then perhaps you want to set yours to say, okay, run this every day, and Saturday is good, but we probably want to run this on all days of the week. But perhaps my store closes at maybe 6 p.m. Now, military time, 6 p.m. would be 1,800 hours. You always add 12 to get to your p.m. evening hours. Now, in this case, if I close the store at 6 p.m., then I might want to give the system a little bit of time to finish anything else. Maybe they're still, balancing the tape. Maybe they're closing out the cash stores for the evening. So I'll give them a little bit of time before that scheduler should kick off or start running those tasks. I can queue up the scheduler at pretty much any time, but I can set the individual tasks to hold off until a specific time. Now, in this case, it's set to 18:30, which is 6:30 p.m. If I don't have any other processes running, such as a backup, a antivirus system scan, a mirroring software that maybe copies the hard drive, I want to make sure that my Anthology scheduled tasks don't try to overlap any other scheduled tasks I might be doing in the Windows system. So bear in mind a little bit when you're setting this up, what are the different times that your store closes, and what are the other tasks that might be running on your system. Now, my backup normally doesn't run until 10 p.m. at night, and the antivirus doesn't normally run until 1 a.m., so 6:30 is more than ample time to get those tasks done. So I could leave my time for 6:30 p.m., but there's another alternative too. Some stores have different closing times during the week. It could be 5 p.m. on Sunday nights and maybe 9 p.m. on Wednesday nights. So to handle that situation, instead of trying to figure out, well, what time would this run at the latest, it's actually easier to use this force option. What force does is it basically goes through, and instead of waiting for a specific time for this task, the quick backup in this case, to run, as soon as that scheduler is queued up, whether it's 5 p.m. on Sundays or 9:15 p.m. on Wednesdays, as soon as the scheduler is queued, then this task of quick backup using this force option would start immediately. So depending on how your store runs, depending on how late your staff is working in the evenings, decide between using a specific time or using force. I tend to like to use the force option because I know then the tasks are running almost as soon as I'm walking out the door. Once you set those items the way you want, do enter line, and you'll see there's our first item that is now showing up in the grid. The next thing is I want to do a database reindex. Now, I could try to figure out how long my database reindex needs to run after the quick backup finishes. But you know what? I can link my next task right to the first one, so the system knows that as soon as the quick backup runs, just immediately start my next task. So to do that, of course, I'm going to save. I'll do F4 new again, and let's choose database reindex. And instead of having to mess with the date and time, I can use this link to option, which now brings up a window of what's the most recent task I could assign it to. I'll say quick backup and select, And now I can enter my line, and now you can see that the database reindex is a subtask of quick backup. So it'll start with quick backup. As soon as that's done, then it'll roll right to doing the reindex. Of course, don't forget to save. And let's add a couple more items. Items that we normally recommend that every store does. So we do quick backup first, then database reindex, and next we want to do rebuild keywords. Same thing here. I don't have to mess with the date or time. I can simply go back to the link to option and link it to the task right above it, the database reindex. And let's do one more here. Calculate turns is an option that actually in version 4 was part of the Z-tape process, but many stores felt that that process was taking too long for their staff to wait, so that was broken out, and now it can be done on its own in the scheduler. And we recommend calculate turns being done every night. It's part of the scheduler, so why not? So I'll select calculate turns, and again, I'm going to link to the task above it, and there's calculate turns. What you're seeing here is the very basic, most appropriate setting for every store. Every store should be doing a quick backup, a database reindex, a rebuild keywords, and a calculate turns every evening. Let's save that. And I'd like to point out a couple other options that you might consider using. If you do F4 new, at least in this version, you're seeing another entry of above the tree line daily export. If you're in a future version, you might see some other options. Your tech support guy can give you a little detail on what those other options mean, or you'll find more information in the manual. But at least in this version, the above the tree line daily export option is a service that you can sign up with. For those of you who are looking into it, you can go to abovethetreeline.com. This is a third-party group who will let you export your Anthology sales information to them. They do some data manipulation to get you back some sales reports to help you get a better idea of what's selling really well in your area, what more can you do to sell these items, and some other things. It's an interesting service. But with their service, you have to manually export their data every day. Well, now with the scheduler, we can tell Anthology to build that export file for you each evening. That way you don't have to do that step. You'll still have to upload to their system using their software, but at least the export side of things has been done for you using the scheduler. And then lastly, one other option in this version is Exit Visual Anthology. When your backup and reindex and everything else is done, you may as well have the Anthology program closed for you. In any computer software, it's always a good idea to have that software closed if you're going to have a separate backup process running. If you have a backup to a CD or a tape drive or some other service, you really want to make sure that your Anthology files are completely closed. That way your backup software can get the best copy of those files and not risk them being locked up and getting a bad backup. So it's always a good idea at the very tail end to exit Visual Anthology. And again, we're going to link it right to the task above it, enter the line, and save. And so now here's our completed scheduler. Now, for the sake of the next step, to show you what the Z-tape process looks like and how it kicks that scheduler into waiting, I'm going to make a slight modification. I want you guys to be able to see what happens when that scheduler is going to wait to run certain tasks. So just for this one sample, normally I would recommend everybody use the force option, but just for this one sample, I'll uncheck force and save it. That way you can see things a little bit better in a moment. So that's setting up our scheduler. Basically, you can set your date, your time, and what tasks. You could decide to do different tasks on different days simply by choosing another entry. So perhaps we wanted to do a different quick backup, and we only want to do it maybe on Sunday evenings at, maybe 9:30 p.m., which would be 21:30. So you could do separate tasks. You can do different items, different schedules. You can do quite a bit in here. Let me just delete that line item because we probably don't want to do that with this demo here. All right, let's talk a little bit about actually queuing up that scheduler or getting it to run after the Z-tape. Now, in this demo, we've set it up in the Tools Options area So the scheduler will kick off automatically once the Z-tape has been run. For those of you who've decided to make your staff manually start that scheduler, just so you know how to do that, you can go to Tools, Scheduler, and Run. Your staff will get this window, and it knows what day it is, so from here all we have to do is click on Start. Your staff must click on the Start button for this to really be in the queued mode. This is sort of a prep mode right now. I'll say Start, and this is what they should be seeing as they're walking out the door, that it's going to run this task at 6:30. Now let me cancel out of this, and I'll show you what it looks like when we have it set to run after the Z-tape. So, as usual, every evening your staff is going to get ready to close up for the night, so they're going to go to sales. Maybe they're going to do an X-tape, but ultimately when they're finished, they're going to do a Z-tape. And just as usual, everything looks the same here. They're going to do run. It's going to ask them, of course, do you want to print or preview? I'm going to go ahead and print mine out. Here's the next message of, do you want to clear these sales? Yes. And now when I close this window out, when I finished my Z-tape, when it's done printing, when I do F9 cancel, then the scheduler will queue up. So I'll do F9 cancel, and now here's my scheduler window. So this is the point where I probably am maybe vacuuming up for the night, maybe just shelving the last few things, and locking up and heading out the door. When I come back in the next morning, Anthology actually will have closed completely on its own. I'll be right back to my normal desktop. That's about it for the scheduler. Like I said, there's lots more information in the manual. It's a good idea to read that first, and that should give you a pretty good idea of how to use the scheduler. If you have any questions, you can send an email to support@anthology.com. Be sure to include the store name and some information on the question, or you can call our toll-free number, which is 800-819-0095.